Hello, tennis fans. You're listening to Matchpoint Canada, the official podcast of Tennis Canada. We're back with our second episode of 2024 already and getting prepared for the Australian Open. And we've got a big guest with us today to help us get ready for that. Very excited to welcome back to the podcast a former top 10 singles and doubles player on the WTA. She's captured every Grand Slam title in mixed doubles, won the Fed Cup for Team Slovakia, and has made quite a name for herself since retiring with her expert tennis analysis as well. Daniela Hantuchova, great to have you back on Matchpoint Canada.
Thanks for having me, guys, and Happy New Year. Can't believe the season has already started.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
It comes up so quickly because the off season in tennis, of course, is such a short one for those covering the sport, certainly for those playing in the sport. And as a former player, I'm wondering, just to get started, what was your feeling like at the start of every tennis season? What kind of nervousness did you have? Excitement? What were you feeling this time of year before the first events?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I would say it was a combination of excitement and just looking forward to use all the maybe new tools that we've been working on in the preseason. Being, first of all, super happy being able to be down under where the weather is amazing, and we don't have to deal with minus 10s as we do right now here. I'm sure you guys the same. Yes. Even more so. So it's just happy times, everyone's smiling, tons of energy. But at the same time, especially the first match, it's always so weird because I always feel like it doesn't matter how many years you've been on the tour, the first match you're like, oh, there are lines people, ball kids, it's like everything you have to like digest again and go through the process. Like the first match on the tour, it almost felt to me like the first few games, no matter how many practice matches I would play before, and I hated that feeling and I wanted to get rid of it. But after, like year number 15, I gave up and I just realized it was always going to be the case. But it was just maybe the 15-20 minutes of the very first match. So those nerves were kicking in big time. But after that was, yeah, I would say it's one of the best times of the season because everyone's fresh, everyone's got tons of energy. So really, a lot of amazing tennis to look forward to. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to see who kind of, comes out of the blocks particularly fast and who's sort of in form right away. I wonder for you, did you get some feelings of nostalgia when you watch the action, down under now, obviously the site of your special semifinals run? And when you've posted maybe a big result at a location or at a tournament, when you're going back there, are you carrying a bit of that with you, which gives you that sort of extra confidence?
Yeah, not only that memory of those amazing matches and wins, but also that feel of that very particular court. So I had that on a Rod Laver. Like no matter how bad I was playing in the tournaments leading up to the Australian Open, I feel like as soon as I stepped on Rod Laver, I found my game again. And most of the time I was lucky enough to play some good tennis. So I would say it's not only the venue, but the exact courts where you've played some incredible matches. And it's always like a confidence boost when you get to a venue, to a tournament where you've done well in the past. It's just automatically you are going to play maybe at least I would say 20% better because you just feel different, walking around the grounds. And that's why I can't even imagine how Rafa must be feeling in Paris when he enters that Roland Garros or Novak in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, of course, I can only imagine the feeling Novak Djokovic has when he steps on Rod Laver Arena, just a place where you've won so many matches and you feel like, a little wrist injury sort of in a loss to Alex de Minaur, it almost doesn't matter at all. It's like all the powers are going to be back when he takes that court. We know he's obviously the favorite on the men's side as we're currently in qualifying having this conversation. I have to ask, in your eyes, who's the favorite on the women's side as we're starting Australia? Obviously, Aryna Sabalenka, the defending champion, and then you have Iga, Elena, Coco all in the mix.
From what I've seen the last couple of days and weeks down under, I would pick Rybakina. I mean, the way she played in that final against Sabalenka is one of the best matches I've seen. She definitely has improved so much with her footwork, especially on the backhand return and being pushed out wide to the backhand side. That's where I feel like sometimes being as tall as she is, and I mean she's got even longer legs than mine, so I don't know how she does move really well for her height. With Sabalenka it's a little bit easier because she's got that extra power, but I was very impressed with her explosiveness and the recovery shot on the backhand side, and couple of returns she hit when Sabalenka was, especially in the edge side, going for those big serves out wide. If she plays the way she played in that final in Brisbane, I don't think even Iga can do anything about it. Obviously, Sabalenka couldn't in that match, so I would pick her as the favorite to win Australian Open.
Just for our listeners, we're recording this interview just prior to the draw being revealed for the Aussie Open, so we don't know yet where the players are going to fall. However, Ben and I later in this episode, which we're recording at a later date, will have that information for you to dissect the draw. A lot of returning players, especially on the women's side, who are coming back. Grand Slam champions like Naomi Osaka, Angelique Kerber, as well as some younger players like Emma Raducanu and Amanda Anisimova. During your career, there were times where you had to take off for injuries or maybe for a little bit of a reset. What was the feeling for you when you had to come back from a layoff and get back to competition? Perhaps right now it's the best time for these players because they're starting the season fresh with everyone else. But if you could just kind of recall what some of those feelings were like for you when you were coming back after being away from competition for a while.
Yeah, 100% spot on what you said there. When you're coming back at the beginning of the season, you kind of are on more or less the same level with the rest of the players because they've been away for a couple of weeks. It's so much harder to do it during a season and to kind of jump on that running train because you always feel like in a way, the tennis always involves, and it depends so much how long you've been away, because to kind of catch up with the speed and the momentum of the tour, it is so difficult, and especially also depends what kind of injury, because sometimes you might be already 100% healthy, but for some reason you just can't trust that part of your body just yet, and you have to go through playing matches and trusting that, okay, it is actually, let's say when I had a stress fracture on my foot, it was absolutely fine, but I still was so afraid to push off that leg for a couple of weeks. So it is very individual depending on the injury and how long the players have been away. But having said that, coming back at the beginning of the season, it's always a great bonus and so many comeback stories. I personally, I'm really looking forward how Caroline and Elena will do, because they're closer to my age group there. Obviously, Angelique as well. But I've been very impressed with Svitolina, how she played in Auckland, and so many incredible comeback stories. Obviously, Naomi knows what it takes down under. Great to see Emma back with everything she's been through. So there are going to be so many amazing headlines throughout the tournament.
Absolutely agree. And one of the things these players are going to have to endure, unfortunately, is rebuilding their ranking. Tennis is kind of unforgiving in that sense that when you're away from an injury, you got to come back and you don't have a seeded number next to your name in the tournaments right away. You were seeded at many tournaments throughout your career, but also went through times where you had to rebuild the ranking. How frustrating is that for players? How much is that on your mind when you come back? Or do you just try and block that out and keep it simple and just stick to your game?
You know what? Actually, I didn't mind it at all, because I know being in the situation as a seeded player, you are most fragile at the beginning of the tournament. So I actually did not mind if I had to play a seeded player the first two matches, because that's where the most pressure is on them. They get better with every match. In the second week, obviously the champions start to find another gears. So I always kind of, that was a thing I had. I didn't like to be the one in the spotlight, but I always prefer to be the underdog. So I didn't mind not being seeded, because I knew the seeded players were afraid of me, and if I had a chance to beat them, it was always better in the first week. So in the names we just mentioned, Emma, she's not afraid of anyone. Anisimova, the same. Angelique, obviously. So I don't think these players really worry about who they play, unless, okay, maybe Rybakina Sabalenka first match, that wouldn't be ideal, but they are experienced, and I don't think they really worry about who they play, and I think they do enjoy not having that pressure on themselves.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, imagine if you're a seeded player drawing an Osaka or an Isimova in the first round. I mean, you must be a little bit terrified. We had a great team event to kick off the year as well with the United Cup. We discussed it on our last episode. 18 countries, men and women merged together. You obviously had success representing your country of Slovakia, and in your playing days, it felt like Slovakian tennis was very strong. There was, of course, Dominika Sibylkova. On the men's side, we had her body, Martin Klijan. What do you think the state of Slovakian tennis is today? And do you have any involvement on that side of the game at all?
I don't accept admiring everyone in the National Tennis Center, where I like to go and do my workouts almost every day to kind of
Nice.
admire their preseason and to enjoy the part of them all living on the 25th of December while I'm having a wonderful Christmas with my family and just wishing them good luck. So that was my input to our Slovakian tennis. But having said that, we do have a good setup for the players here. Actually, Rybakina lives 5 minutes from here as well. There were so she was practicing here and preparing too. There was Siniakova as well. We had a lot of international players here, which is always great for the local ones. For some reason, I feel like it could be better. We've got some young ones coming up, particularly Renata Jamrichova. If you can remember this name, I think she's going to be spotted very soon in the big tournaments. Big, tall, lefty girl. So I would say the next generation is going to do well on the women's side. On the men's side, I don't really, I don't watch it. I don't follow it that much. And also, I'm not here that often, but on the girls' side, I think we're going to be good in the next couple of years.
Okay. We're certainly going to be watching for that. In terms of the Australian Open, we love to pick a dark horse or a wild card or a couple names to maybe keep our eyes on. Are there any players, either men or women, you'd have your eye on to maybe be a danger to make the second week or cause a big upset in particular?
Well, I think he will not like me to call him an underdog, but Alex de Minaur, the way he's been
Hmm.
playing and beating both Novak and Carlos, to me, with the crowd down there, I think he's got a great chance. He's got incredible mentality, working ethic. He moves fantastic, and once you get a crowd involved, will it be enough against Novak? I don't think so, but I think he can have a deep run. Well, Sasha Zverev is not the underdog. I would love to see, probably not Australia, maybe yes, but I would love to see Yannick Sinner winning a slam this year. Talking overall, because the way he played in Torino, I mean, if the guys can keep with the momentum of what they've created in Torino and kind of transfer it to Australia, that would be amazing, because I've never, I mean, we all that we were there on site, we were saying like, this is a tennis from another world. So let's see if they can start where they left off. And on the women's side, yeah, I like to put my chances on Svitolina, because she's got the experience. Obviously, she's got a new life off the court. I was very impressed the way she moves. She does everything smart. She doesn't overplay. I would pick her probably.
Great choice, and easy to sort of forget when a player is away for a period of time. You forget how great they can be, and she's come back and very quickly played well last summer. And this is a legitimate top 5, top 10 player who was in that position for quite some time. So I think Ben and I are on board with that pick as well. I want to go back to something Ben was asking you about in terms of Slovakian tennis, and in particular the success you had representing your country in team events. You won the Hopman Cup back in 2005. You won the Fed Cup, now the Billie Jean King Cup in 2002. Uh, Obviously, representing your country was something you were very proud to do and something you were very, happy to do when called upon. Where do those successes and those moments rank for you when you look back upon your tennis career?
Oh, it means everything to me. If you ask me, the highlight of my career is winning Fed Cup for my country, because we are such a small one, and especially now, okay, we've got the national center. There was no such thing back in the time. There was no support from the federation. It was just my parents and myself trying to figure out and navigate through the tennis world. And I also always felt like, because my first coach was my grandmother, that when I was playing for Slovakia, I was playing for her even more so than at any other event. And just understanding that sport is one of the very few vehicles we've got in Slovakia to kind of make our country known. And having that chance, it was something I really wanted to grab. I remember when we played Fed Cup final, the way the schedule was done, and we had a lot of talks last year about Cancun and the Fed Cup final afterwards. Well, I was in a situation where the WTA finals were in LA the week right after the Fed Cup final was semi-final final group in Gran Canaria. So Monday morning, I had to fly from Gran Canaria to LA and play Tuesday there. So my coach at the time, Nigel Sears, he said, look, you have to make a choice here. You're not going to be able to perform at both. You have to choose what's more important to you. And in 1 second, I said Fed Cup. So
no hesitation.
I after all these years, even now living here, for some reason I was born here. I'm so proud of the people here, and being able to win those cups for Slovakia was definitely the highlight of my career.
I wonder if there's maybe some comparisons between Canada and Slovakia in that sense. I mean, physically, we're a big country, but we don't have a huge population, and we're certainly not known or haven't been until recent years as a tennis nation. I think that's definitely changing with the Billie Jean King Cup victory and the Davis Cup victory before that.
Yes.
But certainly back when
And I think there is
Go ahead.
Sorry. And I think there is one more even bigger similarity, that we kind of want to make the tennis the highlight sport against the hockey, which we always kind of
true.
fight, right?
Mm.
So
Yep.
and I think we help each other to motivate, because I remember the year we won Fed Cup, the guys won the World Cup in ice hockey. So I think there's always that, and
Wow.
you guys have it very similar to us.
Yeah, I think hockey will obviously always be a dominant sport here in our country, but more kids are picking up tennis rackets. My kids like picking up the rackets and playing as well as the hockey stick, which is nice to see. What have you made of the rise that Canadian tennis has made since your playing days? I mean, certainly there were some talented Canadian tennis players then, but not at the same level and consistency as we're seeing now.
Yeah, it's a good word to use, the consistency, and it's also so much about the team spirit. In Fed Cup, you don't have to have the best players in the world, as you guys proved, but it's during that week how everyone can stick together. The captain and the trainers and coaches, they play a big role of just creating the momentum. And we definitely were not the favorites, as you said, very similar to Canada, that no one really expected us to win, but day by day, match by match, tie by tie, we kind of felt like, hold on a second, we actually got a chance to do something really special here for our country. And I think that's where, that pride that, we are a small country in population, but we can make something very special that kind of makes you play your best tennis, really.
I have to ask you, and you kind of touched on this in a sense with having to decide on difficult travel plans when you're playing and such difficult schedules on both the WTA and ATP. And a lot has been made of potential changes to the structure of tennis, the idea of maybe merging the tours, shortening schedules, discussions of some sales with Saudi Arabia. And now they're implementing these new rules to avoid late starts. So matches can't be going on past 11 p.m., trying to provide some more recovery time for players. Do you have any strong thoughts maybe from your playing days on what could be done to improve the growth of our sport and just make it a little bit easier on the players, because it's such a long season, as you know?
Well, it is a long season, but first of all, let's not forget the prize money are crazy.
Yeah.
And the season is just as long as when we played, and it's just a different communication of the generation now. And when we played, where there were problems, there were things we were not happy, but you kind of keep it in the office. You don't go out there publicly saying, oh, I don't like this about the tournament, I like that. I'm not saying there are things we can improve, but you go and discuss that in WTA office or ATP, because I think sometimes the players do not realize when they tweet something or they put something on their social media. That's like, you know, pulling up the biggest press conference after the biggest match you ever won, making everyone aware of something you are not happy with. And that's just like, let's say in ice hockey, you know, a player is not happy with the ice. He's not going to complain about it because he's playing for the club. And if he would be sitting on the bench for the rest of the season, probably. So I think protecting the tour, there should be some rules applied that you just can't make those negative comments against your own tour. If you want to, go ahead, but then we deduct your prize money or something, because the tournaments, especially these days when it's not easy to run any kind of event, now being on the media side, I see it even more so. They are doing all they can, and then, you know, you've got players coming and complain, but complain to the people running the tournament. Don't complain to the world what you're not happy with. It's like, you know, back in the day in April, okay, sometimes it was snowing in Berlin or Warsaw. What we started to record the snow, like, I cannot believe I'm playing in these conditions for that amount of money. Like, sometimes perspective people, with everything we've got going on in the world, I would appreciate just at least think twice before you going to post that. So that freedom of just saying everything as they feel, I do not agree with it. Now, yes, there are some problems that we need to face. I 100% believe we should, you know, try to have the joint tours as much as we can. I think for women's tennis, we can only benefit from that, and just kind of, you know, follow ATP on whatever they want to do, kind of find ways how we can do it together. Late starts, we all have them. Again, yes, it's good that we are talking about it, and so many times the schedule is very rough. What I would suggest that, okay, if someone is playing late sessions, keep them on the late session schedule, because I think for a player, it's the most frustrating is if you play second night match and then the day later you play first on, because that's like, you know, almost 12-hour jet lag difference. So like, that's where I feel we can do much better job, at least from my experience of playing. And there are always things to improve, but I would appreciate it if we keep it within and not go so much public with every little problem there is. That's just given the amount of prize money and how much they're earning. Yeah. But again, it's a different generation.
That's true.
And it is. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, I was going to say, and you know, just to follow up with this different generation. I mean, having something completely brand new, and I watched the first couple of episodes of season 2 of Breakpoint. You know, that inside perspective that I have to say, I mean, we felt like we knew about players like yourself and obviously the Williams sisters and Hingis and Capriati and stars back then, but this is definitely a completely different glimpse inside the game. Is it a show you're tuned into? And I have to ask, if this were happening when you were on tour and they producers came up and asked you, can we follow you for a season? Would you say yes to something like that?
Okay, so to answer first question, I did not watch anything because I'm so proud of myself. I managed to be 1 week away completely from phone, computer, anything.
Wow.
So really, I was doing my homework to, you know, talk about Rybakina and everything, like just a couple of days ago, to catch up. The only thing I did watch was Rafa, his first match. I just wanted to see that out of respect, and it was amazing. I have to say, in France, the day after, right away, he was in L'Equipe on the first page. Welcome back, Rafa, which was so cool to see. So, except that I did not tune into Breakpoint. I will. In my days, a very good question. Knowing what I do know now from the media side, I would say yes now. But me 10 years ago, knowing how shy I was, how I was not using any social media, even though it started already. I just wanted always my tennis to be about my tennis. Yeah, there's no way I would have done it. But knowing what I know now, I would tell myself, like, Dani, come on, this is good. You need to do it.
Different perspective, right? And at the time, there's so much you're focusing on when you're competing. I understand there's some players that just want to block it out. What's your focus for 2024 as we wrap up our interview with you, Dani? Are you covering many events this year? Are you planning a full schedule from that side of things? is the Real DNA podcast. You're going to be doing some of that this year as well. We see a lot of tennis players, former tennis players, picking up the pickleball racket. I don't know if that's something you've tried yet or not, but what's on the horizon for you this year?
Thank you for asking. So definitely, as soon as I get back from Australia, back to the slopes. I mean, I was born in the mountains, and yeah, I'm just already looking up the weather forecast if it goes as far as 3 weeks from now. So hopefully, spending a lot of time there. Not pickle, but paddle here. I'm really getting into it. It's probably bigger than pickleball here in Europe. Absolutely loving that. A lot of golf, I hope. And on the serious side of things, yes, the podcast, the DNA will be back. Really looking forward to that. It will be also more specific on, say, I want to always pick up different subjects. So let's say recovery for professional athletes, or for someone that just does daily fitness work for in between their jobs, or nutrition when you travel, how to work out at home, on the road, and so on. So be a little bit more specific. Interesting list of guests already lined up, and I will try to travel a little bit less, because it's been 5 years of non-stop travel, which I'm super grateful, but a little bit, hopefully, slowing down.
Right on. Although you did mention to us off air before we hit record, you might be coming to Canada for some skiing opportunities this winter.
Yes. I mean, for a hobby travel, I can go anywhere. Just for work, since I'm 12 years old, I never really stopped. That I will consider a little bit more, and pick and choose.
That's fair. Well, thank you for picking and choosing us to be a guest on our second episode. It's so great to see you again, and our listeners are very excited that you're going to be back with us. So thank you, and all the best this year, and we can't wait to connect with you again down the road.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.